An issue related to women's bodies in the past was the issue of foot binding, which was done to stop the growth of feet in young girls in China. The ideal shoe size for a Chinese woman at the time was around 3 to 4 inches, so it was their goal to prevent the foot from growing past that point. Their feet would be wrapped tightly with a long 10-foot bandage that was tightened every day to bow the arch of the foot. The pain that the binding caused was excruciating and cruel, as it developed corns on the toes of the feet or cut off circulation that would cause rotting skin. Young girls were subject to this pain as early as age 4, and it lasted for up to 2 years. The exact root cause of foot binding is unknown, but the custom is said to have begun under the ruling of Li Yu in China in 970 AD, when one of her associates danced on top of a golden lotus pedestal with her feet wrapped in silk cloth. Her movements were so delicate and graceful, so other women wished to have such delicately bound feet like the dancer. This desire eventually spread throughout the upper class as an ideal for fashion purposes. Although the binding caused the foot to look deformed, women became invested in making an attractive shoe to cover them up. The shoes were made with delicate embroidery and embellished with jingling bells to draw attention to the perfectly sized feet. Foot binding spread even further than the upper class, when the lower classes adopted the custom during the Song dynasty and women began binding their feet daily. It eventually became a way of life for all of Chinese society. Just like how mothers in countries like Ethiopia forced their daughters into genital mutilation, Chinese mothers forced their daughters to bind their feet. If their feet were not binded and shrunken down to the ideal size, they were prone to not getting married. The small foot size contributed to a woman's beauty and made them more feminine, dainty, and desirable to a man. Small feet was seen as more of a novelty than facial features or the shape of their bodies. It was said to be the most intimate and erotic part of the female anatomy. Photographs exist of men grasping and fondling women's small feet, showing its purpose to attract men. The binding feet became an issue not only because of the pain it caused women, but also how it impacted their status in society. Women who were formerly independent became completely dependent on men because the way their binded feet forced them to walk limited them from accomplishing the skills that they previously had. The woman's bound foot restricted her to staying in the house, thus forcing her to be controlled by her man. Women no longer had any freedom. They became completely useless because they were no longer able to contribute to the household like they used to. This became an issue for the poorer families who needed women's labor in the house or on the farm, but the beauty that their small-sized feet brought them gave them a chance to possibly marry a man of higher class. The tradition of foot binding was unfair to women and was eventually discontinued after being present in the Chinese society for about 1,000 years. Women during this time span were unable to venture out into the world, which made them vulnerable to being controlled. The Manchu leaders of the Qing dynasty were the first to attempt to discontinue the custom and get rid of its popularity, but they were not the key terminators of the practice. Scholars later began reforming against the foot binding in the late 1800s. However, it was not fully terminated until the 1920s when the nationalist government required girls under age 15 to allow their feet to grow naturally. Fines were also inflicted upon women if they were caught with binded feet. These attempts to end feet binding were necessary, in my opinion, because sometimes people will be reluctant to listen unless they are subject to getting in trouble with the law. People are more likely to listen to the reformers if they impose a fine because people want to avoid the payment. However, Chinese women struggled still with their appearance when they allowed their feet to grow naturally because society didn't change their negative perceptions of large feet. The issue was eventually completely terminated during the Communist Revolution in 1949. Hopefully, our American society and other societies across the country can eliminate their definition of their ideal woman in the near future as the Chinese did.